Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larson. Today on the show, I've got Harry B.
I believe, and insight obviously, connects with vision for like bigger purpose is like, I really like to every great creative piece of work is obviously strategically driven, but like to me, when I have the confidence around a point of view into a challenge, that's the insight. And then I like to always do things differently. Like I've never been comfortable resting on my morals, repeating myself.
Or Harry Bernstein, if you want his full name. But Harry, for people who don't know about your background, can you give us a bit of the elevator pitch?
Great. How's it going? I'm Harry B, at Harry B on Instagram, Harry, the letter B. Yes, I've worked in advertising for 20 years in New York City, the home and birthplace of advertising, kind of a modern madman. I've worked at some big agencies like Ogilvy and Mather and under WP, and then Berlin Cameron. I've worked client side at Rockstar Video Games, which is they make Grand Theft Auto. And then I started my own agency in social media pretty early in the social media marketing game about 9 years ago, called the 88, named it to our address. We were at 88 Prince in Soho, New York. And then about a year and a half ago, I was acquired by Havas, the holding company Havas, which is owned by Vivendi. And now I'm the CCO of Havas New York, and I'm also still the CEO and CCO of the 88, which is now called the Annex 88, which is the company that was acquired and focuses on digital and focuses on social media and culture type activations for clients. But at Havas proper, I manage the whole consumer journey. That's
great. Well, I was listening to your interview on Ad Age, and one of the things that was fascinating to me is, so I'm originally an art school dropout. I'm was an illustration major before I dropped out to become an entrepreneur and accidentally ended up in finance. But I have so many of my friends that were art majors that are either at an agency or a couple of them run agencies. But I'm fascinated with this idea of your art background and kind of what you talked about of looking around the room one day and realizing the only 50-year-olds still in the business owned the agencies. Can you talk about this idea and branching out to becoming an entrepreneur?
Cool. Yeah. So that story is, I mean, it's a combination of two experiences that led me to start my own agency. So I have to be honest, I'm actually not very daring. So people are like, oh, to be an entrepreneur, you have to be so courageous and daring. I was just more like, so I look around the room, and I was in a Berlin Cameron at the time, was probably about maybe 80 people. Let's just say it's 100 people, just to make it easy, right? And I start doing the math around the room, and I'm like, wow, like 40% of these people, 45% of these people are like, between the ages of like 20 and 28, I think 21 and 28. And then you get into like, 28 to 35, and that's the other like 35, 40 people, right? And you start to get to like 35 to 40, there's like 5 people, and then you're like 45, there's 2 people, and then you're like over, like the only person who's nearing 50 was the owner. So I'm like, where do 50-year-old people go in advertising? They have to be the owner. So I guess if I want to have a career when I'm 50, I have to own an agency. So it wasn't out of courage, it was out of pure logic that I was like, I better become an entrepreneur, and I know how to do this. So I didn't actually start an agency instantly. I went client side for a year, and we had all in-house marketing. So at Rockstar, I learned we had marketing next to PR, next to, back then it was called digital, but it was like Twitter and web. And I really understand a real true integrated model. And from there, I started my own agency called the 88 9 years ago. And the name came from our address. We were at 88 Prince in Manhattan. So I don't think I was the most creative in naming it, but it was out of this kind of the logistics. And I have to be honest, instead of courage, the fear of not having a job. So it was the opposite of courage. I guess being courageous is facing your fear, but it wasn't this like courage. It was just logic that pushed me to that point. And I loved it. And I think the other thing, though, I do think that a true creative is entrepreneurial at the core, and I think a true entrepreneur is creative at their core, meaning that actually Andy Berlin, who owned Berlin Cameron, he can organize crime. He said that basically that entrepreneurs were similar to gangsters, that they basically didn't like walk the walk of the normal person. Mine is more that like I think a true artist, I believe everyone is born creative. And obviously early in school, you're finger painting, you're making. Human nature is to make. That's why we've evolved to the level we are. So I believe that creative is about creation, and we all make. right? And there's a certain point in your life where like society tells you like, oh no, just get, and then some people can just malleably just go along with this path that's lined up, that makes sense. And I think the true creative, right? We're all creative, but the true creative then just always feels something's off a little bit, right? It's not to the point where you're like, you can't be part of society, right? But like, that's where like counterculture and subculture start to happen, because you're like, wait a second, the status quo, I'm doing it. And it just, I don't know, I want more, I want different. And that's where I think that's the heart of a creative person and an entrepreneur, right? Because if you were not an entrepreneur, right, you're totally fine being like, dude, 9 o'clock, I check in, 5 o'clock, I check out. And like I said, I wasn't raised by entrepreneurs. Like my grandfather was a sanitation worker, union sanitation worker. My other grandfather was a truck driver. My dad was a truck driver. Then he became a teacher. So, very like my mom worked for the public schools in New York. So I came from so I wasn't like seeing this. I really believe that, I'm this, I was born this creative. And then the creativity and the not accepting of the status quo makes you create, right? Create your own path, right? Create your own point of view and create your own way of doing things. And that creates businesses, careers, not jobs, and leadership and not managers. So I think the core of a great entrepreneur is creativity, and a great artist. And I think they're one and the same.
It makes me it makes me think of a question, and I'll start with like a little bit of an anecdote and then ask my question. It comes from a story I heard of a guy who was talking to a dentist who wanted to become an entrepreneur, who was like 30 years into his career. And his friend was saying to him, would you ever let an 18-year-old decide your future about being a dentist or not being a dentist or being an entrepreneur? Would you leave that decision up to an 18-year-old? And he's like, of course not. He's like, well, you realize it's your 18-year-old self that decided to be a dentist. And, you're like this point, you're vacillating back and forth. It was an 18-year-old version of yourself that made that decision. You're older and wiser now. Can you give yourself permission to make a new decision based on more information? And so my question for you, and the guy ultimately did, but my question for you is, why do you think so many of us struggle with reassessing if our previous career track or decisions is the right way to go? I think about how many times I've wasted time either in a job or in a business line because I was already going, instead of continuing to ask myself the hard question of, where I thought this was getting me, is it actually, like, am I passing those milestones? Is it actually as likely to get me there as I thought it was when I started, which is obviously something that you observed from just being, staff at arguably amazing agencies, Ogilvy and stuff. But why do you think so many of us don't have that conversation with ourselves about getting really honest about, is my current track going to get me where I want to go?
Well, I think the thing is the fear of having the trusting your vision versus the tangible. The where you want to go is vision, right? So the vision, I always say, like, and this is not vision to me is not hallucination. Vision is the narrative for yourself, right? And it is your story. And I do believe that, like, I did not know at 18, I didn't know at 34 that I would even be here, but like the vision for myself, right? And I think vision is supported by a bunch of small decisions, right? So the problem is that like the faith and vision will let you not accept certain compromises, right? Because compromise can be the death of an entrepreneur and the death of, I have to be on, true creative vision, right? So if I'm in this day-to-day job and I'm like, you know what, I'm getting paid really well, and like everyone's nice. It's like, I'm not like, my boss is not yelling at me. I'm, I can work my own hours. I can, I still have maybe I have a work-life balance, or I have enough of a work-life balance. Like, I'm fine, right? And like, to me, like I'm not comfortable. I've never been comfortable with fine. My vision for myself is bigger than fine. And I think that, like, I had to recognize in myself that like fine gets very uncomfortable. And like I said, it wasn't this courage. It was like that I actually got uncomfortable with being comfortable. And that took being very honest with myself, right? It's not about, like I said, and then when I first started my company, I took a huge pay cut. I'm talking like I probably was getting paid a third of what I was paid. I had not a huge amount of savings, but I was the happiest as ever was. Like I was making a third amount of money. I rented my condo. I moved into an apartment in a not as nice apartment. I like had to like obviously like, but I was 10 times happier, right? And it was because I was following my vision. Like I was following that vision. And that, I think people need to understand the relationship with, and I think a big one is money, right? The value of money versus the value of their vision, and I think that like, what is very tangible and easy is like, okay, I have this plan of I make this much money and I'm saving this much and I'm doing this, and it makes a lot of sense. But if you have to compromise for money, your vision, you'll never be happy. And that the satisfaction and joy that comes from having faith in your vision is always, I don't care the number. I have not made checks at the level of many people, but I have gotten checks beyond what I thought I'd ever get at one time. Doesn't match that feeling you get from following your vision. So the value on vision is more important.
Yeah. It kind of plays into one of the other things I was really interested to talk to you about on the show is, I look at, back at Ogilvy, you're doing, that did stuff, Sprite, Kodak, DuPont, yep. Amex, IBM, and that Havas now 19 years later has IBM mm-hmm. as a client. Yeah. And what I do know about you is like kind of your penchant for innovation and your willingness to jump in and explore things and get in on the real guts of new social before everybody else has figured out and stuff like that. Can you talk about a little bit of this path of constant iteration or this curiosity and innovation and what that looks like working with, at an agency with clients like IBM 19 years ago and an agency with clients like IBM now?
Yeah, cool. I mean, yeah. So I think, my core values is insight, innovation. My core creative outline is insight, innovation, craft, right? So I believe, and insight obviously, connects with vision for like bigger purpose is like, I really like to like, I mean, every great creative piece of work is obviously strategically driven, but like to me, when I have the confidence around a point of view into a challenge, that's the insight. And then I like to always do things differently. Like I've never been comfortable resting on my morals, repeating myself, right? Like, so that's the heart of like innovation on every level. And I can talk about some things now where I think actually analog is innovation now. So I'm actually reverting now to analog as being more innovative in a lot of ways, and we talked about it. And then the last is craft, and I do think that like, I think a lot of people have lost that there has to be a craft, and my philosophy is I do to know, but I get paid to know, meaning that like I will like when I'm venturing into 3D, and we were venturing into VR and AR 2 years ago at Annex, like I got this like off the shelf thing where we were body scanning everybody at work with an iPad and like messing with Unity and 3D programs. I didn't want to get paid to do it, but like we brought people to teach me to do it because I need to know something to do it. I mean, I have to do something and then I know it and then I can actually sell it to a client. We actually launched a sneaker for Adidas called the D-Rupt through like an open sourced AR platform that like has gotten some recognition and awards because it was just like, again, I got kind of interested in what AR and VR were doing, and I started messing with it with the team at the 88, and then we like were able to sell it to the client because when the client asked me like, Harry, like this has not been done before in this way, like no client, I'm like, I was like through the experience and the attraction of always doing these things, I can sincerely be like, this is going to like transcend the market competitively. It's going to be like, it's going to engage a consumer in a unique way because I personally was engaged in a new way, right? So it's like, it's this philosophy of like doing to know and then getting paid to know and speak to it because I can only sell what I do. So I think my experience is always like going inward to come outward, right? It's like my, like attracts like. So it's like I'm going to always, here we did a really cool thing for the Grammys this year called Grammys Connect with IBM, where we used Watson to kind of scan all the connection between all the Grammy winners ever. And you could obviously, if you like a certain Grammy winner, you could use that to find another musician. So it was using Watson and all the databases. We actually worked with the Grammys because IBM had a relationship with them. So again, it's like, I love music. I personally like want to, get deeper into music, right? So it's like this ability to like, what is the value of an award show now? So, okay, I see this person wins an award. I already know that song. Awesome. Clap, clap, clap. But now I can actually look on this platform and kind of engage and see, oh, this person has a connection through, they've worked with them before, genre of music, there was multiple touch points, and I can actually learn more and have a deeper music experience from this offline event. So it was just like, the insight there was like, I find award shows boring, like literally. And even the Grammys, which is a great show, they have music. Like I want to find not boring is not wrong. I find it, I wanted to find a new way to engage with it, I guess. So it's like, I think it's my constant drive to personally want to engage with things and do things differently that makes me do it for my clients. And then those people want to work with me.
Well, I kind of want to jump in on this a little bit more. You know, when I listen to your approach and some of the other things that I've heard you did with Bloomingdale's and other clients, I want to talk about or get your thoughts on an idea. It seems like, you know, we have different, you know, in my work with different agencies over the years, mostly as clients, but and just being a real audiobook nerd, listening to a lot of the top marketing books, it seems to me like the idea of unexpectedness is something that pays such big rewards, but is something that isn't followed very much because of, I think about how many my friends and clients in advertising were either art majors or film majors, and then they needed to pay the mortgage, so they got into the creative agency world, right? And there's almost like a popularity contest, it feels like. You know, you get clients that come in and say, well, I want an ad like Apple, or I want an ad like Nike, and there's like this lack of recognition of like, but Apple already did that. A, you're not Apple, and B, Apple already did that. So there's no surprise. There's no endorphin release of discovery. And when I hear about, so I'd love to hear, like with the Adidas launch, with the Grammy thing, just the idea of working with clients and helping them recognize kind of the massive value of doing what hasn't been done instead of fitting in with the other cool things that have already been done.
Cool. I mean, it's a couple of things. I have to be honest. I think I can't speak for all businesses. I can speak from our own experience, but we are in a people business, right? So when I explain we're in a people business and a person, you know, in a relationship business, meaning that I have to have a relationship with my people, meaning the people that work with me, right? My employees, I need to know what they're great at. I need to, my job as a leader is to clear the way for them to do their best work. Right. So that's step one. So if I have a great team, and I'm pretty fortunate to work with some amazing people across, right, like, you know, traditional advertising, you know, copywriting, art direction, technology, social media, like, you know, I have a really, really, really diverse team, and I'm respected. We have a great thing. So that's first thing. So it's about that relationship, right? But so you have this group of amazing thinkers and creators, right? And craftspeople. Craft is super important to me, right? Can they actually make what they can do, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the first step to having a successful agency, is being able to attract, right, inspire, and be able to, you know, kind of cultivate this group of amazing people. Now you have the client side, right? So similar thing here is, you know, your client, there has to be trust, right? The client has to trust you. And I have to be honest, it's not, some clients are attracted to the daring, right? They're attracted to my spirit and my push, right? They come to be pushed. They come for they just say, dude, I could work with any agency. I'm coming to work with you because you did this. They say I want this, but when we tell them this is not this, this is about, like you're saying, this is about going into status quo. It's, you know, I say it's like, this is a swimming upstream. Like, we're going to swim upstream. Are you ready for this? Right. And and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be challenging. Are we going to do this together? And we do it. Right. And there's some clients just naturally want that, and they come back but along that way, there has to be successes. Right. And sometimes the successes are smaller and larger, but like the great brands that have done that great work has been through a relationship. Some of those companies have worked with their agencies for decades, right? Like Nike and Wyden have worked together forever. Like, it's just like they have a deep relationship and trust, right? So it's like, I have to have the trust of my client. I need to get to know my client. And how we get to know each other on both ends, the way I get to know my people that I work with as my employees, and the way I get to do stuff with my clients, is by making things. And sometimes by knowing the client, sometimes the thing is super crazy and nuts. Oh my God, we're doing the first AR unboxing ever. Or we're going to do this. We're going to use a Watson to create the thing. Or sometimes it's like, hey, we're going to make a film that's a little different. Or we're going to like challenge your tagline, you know? Like, I mean, ADP, which which is one of our clients we've been working with for almost a year now. You know, the first point was like really understand their positioning. And, you know, their ADP is obviously a human resource company. very well known for just doing paychecks, but they wanted to be known for the suite of other things. We're like, okay, we have to push it, right? So first we took their name, right? And we like, the tagline became always designing for people, which was kind of obviously ADP. It's not their actual, we didn't rename the company, but we leveraged off their mark. And then we're like, okay, we had to push this, right? So the campaign, which was like the heavy lifting, large, campaign at launch is, what are you working for, right? So we're asking people what they're working for, because we're there to kind of obviously help people accomplish what they do as an HR company. So that's the campaign at launch. It's really beautifully shot. We actually got the testimonials of companies they work with, like the Huffies and, these large companies, and also a lot of cool, they work with a lot of entrepreneurs, actually, right? So that's the above the line, and that checks that box, and it's very valuable, and it feels big, and it feels very emotive, right? But then we were going into, they wanted to do something at South by for their launch, and we're like, having a booth of being like, what are you working for at South by? Like, when I've been to South by, it's very competitive. We're like, we need to like do something wild here. So we took that same philosophy of like always designing for people, and what do people have in workplace? Barriers, right? So what we did there was we made this thing called breaking barriers. So we had 4 rooms where you could actually break barriers in the workplace physically with bats and clubs. It was a physical activation. And the opening activation was on National Women's Day. You could break the glass ceiling. So then there was like, old technology. So like it was a physical activation so this is like ADP is like having people take bats and golf clubs and breaking the barriers of the workplace. It was like if you Google it, it was like one of the top 5 events at South by, seen as like, and they're like, last year's standout thing was HBO made a physical Westworld, people in Westworld. So that was the one that stood out last year. This year, which is HBO, you expect. This year was like ADP is owning South by. But again, it's like, they felt brave and excited because it made sense in this ecosystem, and they had trust because we were able to like together partner and make these decisions together. So, I've done exciting, amazing work with Adidas and, amazing with IBM, but I think all my clients, like once you start to deliver and build a relationship on making things together, making work, like I said, the people that I work with and our natural instincts, and I have to start with my people, they're driven to push things and to create uniqueness. That faith and trust comes, and you're able to get that work into the world and not just copy it, and let them and explain to them that like, the famous case studies were not started by copying other case studies, right? Like, there's always the companies everyone talks about weren't made by copying another case study. It was about
that.
To me, I would
okay, that is totally my line right there. The famous case studies were not made by copying other case studies. I think about like, it wasn't that you just did something innovative. You're at South by Southwest conference, completely known for innovation, and it's not like you went to the little leagues to try and do something different. You weighed in there, and anyways, I love this line. The famous case studies are not made by copying other case studies.
I always tell people, I'm like, I don't like voiceovers sound like voiceovers. I don't like stock music sound like stock music. People are like, but we can't get an original track. I'm like, you have to like work on it to make it feel special. And it's like, I just think that, a lot of, I think it's really great to admire the work in the industry and understand your competitive set. But my whole philosophy is the same inputs get the same outputs. Right. So I'm a very process driven person. And, I know also we've talked about my 20 pages, reading my 20 pages a day. It's like the process of life. So at my agency, we have a meditation room. We do meditation classes every Monday that's open. We get different styles of meditation. Spring, summer, fall, we have a farmer's market with, nutrition rich vegetables and fruit. That are brought from Long Island locally, that's sold at a discount, because I believe that that's a really cool gathering place and market, and it kind of it brings life to the agency, and then whatever isn't bought at the agency, we donate to a food pantry, so people are benefiting from it. And then finally, I said my personal things. It's like do to know, get paid to know. Like always challenge myself. If it's about film, do make videos. If it's about droning, start droning. If it's about teaching myself to do things so that I can speak on them with expertise. Well, and then the 20 pages a day is logging off. Like, the big thing is analog. Yeah. Like, I believe in analog.
I want to talk about this. I actually think this is a good part to end for part 1 of the episode, but that's what I want to dive in on part 2. Once again, if you want to follow Harry, sounds like Instagram at HarryB is probably the best place. Am I right on that?
Yep, you got it.
Okay, great. Everybody, please tune in for part 2 of the interview. Thanks so much. Well, that's it for the episode. One other thing I wanted to tell you about, if you'll remember the guys from Convoy in episodes back, Ken Free and Trent Mano, I went on one of their CEO trips to New York, and I met a guy named Brent Thompson, very successful entrepreneur. He was former CEO of Jive Communications, big company now, I think $300 or $400 million. Anyways, he started a new company called blipbillboards.com. I'm super stoked they're a sponsor now. But I remember a year and some ago when I met him, I thought it was genius. Instead of having to buy 6 months or a year's worth of billboard for thousands of dollars, you can buy 8 seconds at a time for like 10 or 20 cents. You pick what billboard you want it on, what time of day you want it to run. And it just puts so much power in the hands of marketers and CEOs who want to try something and see if it works. You can buy as many or as few as you want, change it as many times as you want. I think now our podcast is being advertised on billboards in like 18 different states because we have these guys as sponsors. We're pretty excited about it. Hope you check out blipbillboards.com. Thanks.